Welcome back everyone to Let's Play Advanced Tactics Gold. This is episode number 34. I'm going to just show you kind of a transition image before and after. And this will be a really brief episode, maybe even as short as 10 minutes. So I don't really have any purpose of showing combat, just trying to demonstrate what's been going on in the last few terms. So we see that it was May when this is exactly a save game from when I left off with you. We had just finished a turn. We had not eliminated all the pockets of resistance near Herschel. In fact, you guys are probably a little more used to the zoomed in view. So we are starting to make gains along this, along the Herschel front. And you can see a kind of natural border for us will eventually be this stream into the mountains. So make for a very good defensive point. And in fact, there's just a little escape point. This is a very cool map. I really like it. So there's a little escape point out of this little valley area between the two streams, almost like a Babylon type area, you know. Anyway, so you could get out through this one little passage, and then it's open from there. Getting to Beirut and Cologne is just going to be a nightmare. There's so much terrible terrain. It's going to be hand-to-hand fighting the whole way, because there's not even a road which really gets us to Beirut in a hurry. Another thing to note is this is the Russians. The Russians are pretty close, so you can see actually in this video, in this save game, that they were just north of this marsh and just west of this one. So they were not quite into the heartland little valley over here, but yeah. What else did I want to say? Okay, so just to give you a general idea, let's zoom out one more time. And in the north, so we were still protecting this pocket area. We don't have any strategic interest moving into this area, beyond the swamp, beyond the stream, and this is a river even, which is extremely prohibitive for supply transport. Again, I think I mentioned it before, but the streams cost like 50, but I think rivers give you 100 AP penalty to your supply route, which is really terrible. So in the north, we had some French units coming in from the highlands. Another small aside here about the terrain of this map. I think I did this intentionally as well when I was touching up the map a little bit, but it is very important, I think, very important to include some kind of compelling, immersive reason, like a realistic reason why your armies wouldn't want to continue beyond the border. So over here by Coutances, it's been a long time since we were fighting, but if you remember, there was a point where this forest was being held and we were going around on the outside. It does make you wonder what the heck is actually beyond these what's beyond this border. You have to close off your head, and in that sense you like concede to yourself that you are playing a video game. I mean, of course we are, but it's kind of fun for immersion to imagine that things are happening in a realistic manner. But there's no border, there's no, I don't know, maybe you could abstract it as like a no-fly zone or a neutral country begins here. Anyways, it's a lot more compelling over here. You have this huge mountain range. Supply is just dreadful through here. There's no reason why any armies would go this way north anyway. And even if you were to get to the edge up here, you have this water on both sides, which kind of makes the argument that the water, that this mountain range just kind of drops down onto a coast. So it makes you feel like, okay, there's no real reason why I need to go that way. It's a little more lacking when you have forest. Forest is, not good, but if you have a road which goes this far north, then you would have supply to go that far north. So again, the water is very helpful to, again, give a compelling reason. So anyways, I just thought I'd point that out because I really enjoy that kind of immersion. Just this. There's no way that our forces are going to go that far north, and you'll even see that. So, anyway, this is my previous episode, and you guys were keenly aware of everything that went on up to this point. Now we're actually going to jump a little bit into the future, as I said I was going to do. So here we go. From May, or I think September, is that where I'm at now? Maybe October? No, September. So now we're in September, and we closed Beirut off. Remember, my previous line was something like this. But now we've actually taken Herschel, sorry, not Beirut, Herschel, and we've pushed along this natural front exactly as I described. I mean, it's just a very defensible line, so there's no reason for us to really push beyond it. And we have our first glimpses of the Russians in this one. In fact, the very cool thing is, in the history for this turn, we actually got to see some Russian combat. So the Russians had 64 rifles, and they eliminated one of the 5 German rifles. But obviously those guys retreated. So it's kind of cool. We can actually see the Russians moving in. It's a little scary. Now, they didn't push forward because obviously they see that I'm there. But here we go again. They attacked, I think this is a gun factory. They only lost 3 rifles. They have 7 armored cars, and they did a massive amount of damage. 21 rifle, 33 staff, submachine guns, trucks, infantry guns. Lots of damage to the Germans. So at this point, we're rooting for anybody but the Russians, because we know the Russians are going to be pretty strong. So they did come in and fortify there. And another attack. So this one was just with 7 armored cars and 1 rifle. They eliminated some more infantry. Pretty brutal assaults by the Russians. I mean, that concludes their turn, but we actually have the Germans, the French fighting the Germans. I have, this is actually my doing. Let me go up to this infantry gun unit here of the Germans. I bombarded it. So basically I put my troops, of course I control my troops, but to abstract this to, bring us into like a real life scenario, I've told my troops to prioritize any German targets, because the threat levels rank in this order. Russians are first. They've taken Lorient again, we see. They're pushing it on the Germans. Excuse me, I'm a little sick, but and they're obviously just the biggest threat because they have the most number of cities besides us. Then comes the Germans. The Germans don't really have that many more cities than the French, to be honest, but they fight better. The AI doesn't have any bonus or like negative trait for being one regime or the other. We've just found that the Germans have been more annoying. And I feel like the French are just on the brink of collapse, so we're not too worried about them. So I actually want the French to keep putting up a good fight against the Germans, because that'll keep the Germans off my back. Also, I would have liked them to hold Lorient a little longer, because that's just extra points they're giving to the Russians. Okay, finally, we bombarded this, so that's all I was trying to say. We actually incited this attack, so you can see that they only attacked with 18 engineers, and they were actually victorious against infantry guns, rifles, and submachine guns. Obviously, this doesn't make sense until you factor in that I had just decimated these forces with an artillery barrage. They were down to 0 readiness and 0 entrenchment. So, since the French act before the Germans, I assume that they were still actually at 0 readiness and 0 entrenchment. So it would have been easy even for engineers to attack them. Okay, so there was another attack by... Obviously, what the French were trying to do is just open up supply line again. They've been cut off this area, so they were able to do so. 8 armored cars and 27 staff in the attack. Very unusual to have staff in the attack with armored cars, but it was still... Oh, in fact, they completely annihilated the division altogether. There is no unit stack left, so political point loss there as well. Another attack. Another successful attack. The Germans just lost a whole bunch. This is another unit that was completely... Oh, no, not completely eliminated. They have some rifles and 1 submachine gun left. So a lot of attacks in this last turn. Moving forward. Just trying to give you guys an idea of what's been going on. Now it's the Germans who are cut off, because with the Russians moving from the east and I'm moving from the west, this whole section is cut off from their main area, which they themselves are now down to just 2 cities. So the French and the Germans are both down to 2 cities. Okay, no, technically they have Laval, but Laval is originally a French city, remember. So that means that it's not providing any supply production for these units, so they are still cut off. They have no supply source. It's just interesting to note. What would the Germans do about that? I don't know. If I was them, I would just push as far as I could to the south, try to relink my forces, and maintain a good defense around Beirut. Because this is a very defendable landscape. Very defendable. Almost impregnable if you do it right with the forest. It's just going to be so hard. But anyway, okay, so here we are, our turn. And one of the things I wanted to showcase is that we now have dive bombers. Now, the dive bombers aren't going to be so useful in the south yet because I'm not going to be going on the offensive. However, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I should showcase the range. If I just do an air recon mission, the dive bomb signal is where they can actually do a land attack. Anything beyond that, and they can only do reconnaissance. So this is what I selected, recon mission. But I don't ever use my dive bombers for recon. These guys have 75 action points, so they just moved over from Velberg. In fact, the headquarters here in Velberg still has another dive bomber. What I guess we could do, since there's only one armored car here, how many armored cars are there up here? Like none? Just infantry guns, huh? One? But, dive bombers are also very good at killing infantry guns, though. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do an airstrike with the one lone dive bomber that's in this group. And I don't really understand why, but for some reason I'm able to do it beyond technically my range. So I can't actually use the dive bomber there. Maybe it's just related to the fact that it's in this headquarters. No, I don't think so, because even when I had a unit here, a separate unit like this one, I think it was still able to bombard longer than its 5-unit range, but I mean, I'll take it. So let's see what happens. We kill one, we kill two. You can see that dive bombers are, if artillery is like a grinding unit that you just smash the enemy forces little by little, you just sap the life away from them. Dive bombers are really more of assassins. They either eliminate targets or they don't. And actually, in this case, you can see we completely eliminated the target. It was completely destroyed. Our dive bomber still has a little bit left. So what I could do is, if I'm going to do a dive bomb, I prefer to first lead off with artillery barrage. The reason for this is I want to lower the entrenchment of these units, which lowers their defense against my dive bombers. So we'll get a good 10 rounds in. We see that we lowered their entrenchment to 0. These guys are decimated anyway, but they still have an infantry gun, which I think we might be able to pick off with the... Oh, we don't have enough action points, it turns out now. That's fine. I mean, I wanted to bombard that guy anyways, just to suppress him, but let's showcase this dive bomber then up here. We have an armored car and a lot of infantry guns. Here's my armored car that probably is my best target. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's just at the edge of my range. But I think I'm going to let him defend against, hopefully, somebody other than me. So I'm just going to keep attacking the unit closest to me. So we'll do a heavy bombardment from both artillery. I already bombarded this one, so the French have gotten their due as well. I know I'm prioritizing the Germans, but in this area, in this middle area, it doesn't really matter to me who I prioritize. I just want to make sure that nobody attacks us. Because we're rebuilding right now. So we did that, and now we do our dive bombing attack, and I'm pretty sure this is going to decimate their infantry guns. So you can see that these assassins, they did some work. Wow, we killed a whole bunch of horses even, staff. They have almost nothing remaining. So, and that's what you'd expect. The dive bombers come in, and they just eliminate single targets. They don't usually lower readiness, they just kill or don't kill. And I can showcase that a little bit more up north. So really what's happening here is I'm gathering massive units in these hexes. What's the idea here? Well, I know that if I push on Orléans too quickly, or too slowly, if I just do a steady push, the French are going to know to defend Orléans and Rouen with a huge force. So I'm kind of trying to sucker them in to this open plains region, where I can effectively use my rangers and especially my armor to just blow through their ranks. The idea being that I want to take Orléans, as soon as I'm just like a snake. I'm coiling up in this area. This is Schwerpunkt, right? Spear point. I want to mass all my forces, break through their lines, and drive all the way to the city, to their capital, before they really have time to defend in a reasonable manner. If I just progress slowly, 1 hex or 2 hexes at a time, they're going to fall back into the city and start putting up, big defenses there. So the idea is if I can act very quickly, considering that I'm 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes away from Orléans right now, hopefully they don't have too many defenses there, and once I break through this really meaningless front, which is just full of infantry guns, and those are susceptible to bombardment, so my artillery doesn't do so poorly against enemy artillery. So that's not terrible. Actually, yeah, it doesn't do very well, does it? But I've seen still that it doesn't do poorly. I mean, we've seen the artillery lower the readiness. But the more important thing is these guns just don't defend against infantry, like, at all. 200 on the attack, but only 50 on the defense. And their readiness will be lowered. So basically, coil up. Our snake is coiled up here. And it's going to lash out. And hopefully in 1 or at the most 2 turns, I'll be at least into the suburban or hopefully into the capital itself. So I can reach Orléans from where I am with my armor in 1 turn, because it's like 20 plus 30 plus 30. Is that true? Then I can't. Oh wait, but these are just infantry guns. That's right. I think because infantry guns don't exert a zone of control, ZOC points 0, which means it actually doesn't put pressure on your hex. Where's an example of that? Well, right now we know that it normally takes only 10 for us to move, and it would take 20, right? Movement cost 20 here. That's only because they have 2 rifles and, well, a lot of infantry in this one. If I'm able to bombard so that all the infantry are dead, then it won't matter. They won't have any zone of control on this. Okay, but that's not what I wanted to do up here. I just wanted to briefly do a dive bomb attack. I think we'll bring both to bear, because this is the one I want to attack this turn. In fact, did we already bombard? No. So I'm going to again do my usual manner is to bombard first. These guys are only getting it 7 rounds, but since it's mostly not infantry, that's going to be more than enough. In fact, this tough guy here, he actually didn't die. And we took out 2 armored cars in like, I don't know, it's collateral damage really. We didn't intend to kill any armored cars. That's a bonus. But we'll follow it up with a nice big attack with doesn't look like this guy has the ability to contribute with only 20 action points remaining. So we'll send this guy out, and he's able to just decimate. They retreated after only 4 combat rounds. They're down to 0 and 0, so they're basically ready for my armor attack, which means we'll divert my armor, my Air Force, I should say, to the next group. And this one, I should have bombarded first. I don't know why I didn't. But we were still able to kill 1 and make the other one retreat. So it's pathetic. This unit is almost destroyed. Now, I still have a few action points left. I think what we'll do is bombard here. And I think I have 2 artillery in this hex that are ready. Wait, maybe in this one. 175. So what about in this hex? I think I have another one which is at 100. Yeah, 100 there. So 100 and 100, that's perfect. Attack. Huge amount of bombardment off. And we'll follow that up. We're just trying to weaken the French as much as possible. I didn't even realize that this is a gun factory, a location, but that doesn't matter to us at all. And now we'll send in our airstrike. And we can actually get both of them. So I guess 3 hexes away was too far, but 2 hexes away is close enough for my other dive bomber group to contribute. So this will be a pretty short combat because we don't have that much action points. But even in the short amount of time, we killed 7 infantry guns. And you can see the advantage of dive bombers. Then unless they get flak guns or fighters themselves, which it doesn't seem like the AI has enough political points to invest in that. They spend all their political points. I can't emphasize how stupid I think this is, but they spend all their political points building like a gazillion factories. So, that's unfortunate, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles in this game. Okay, good. So you see that we took down this infantry gun group. It was originally, I thought there was 2 in here, but the combat strength was around 140, 150. Excuse me. And we've taken it down to only 12. So we've reduced it to less than 10% of its original value. Now this is why artillery and dive bombing makes them a really, really effective 1-2 combo. Good, so that's all I'm going to showcase for this turn. I'll keep pushing, and what I think I'll do is I'll record when we actually begin our campaign, our rush against Orléans and Rouen. Just in case I didn't mention it, obviously, we do have a new headquarters in the south, so Kevin Edwards is a fine commander. He's now underneath Daryl Mack, so that no gray forces are going to be on the front. the Supreme Headquarters is effectively going to be like your army commander. And these are now more like corps, although they're way more, they have way more units than a typical corps does. So maybe this is considered an army group and these are my 3 different armies. I don't know, whatever you want to abstract it as is fine, but I'm just happy that we have our 3 different colors, green, red, and then yellow. That's the order I'm supposedly going to put them in because this is the northern yellow, red is the eastern, and of course that makes green the southern. So anyways, thanks for watching this episode. So stay tuned for an attack on Orléans and Rouen, and eventually a big clash with the Russians. We see that they have massive forces. We saw that one of their infantry attacks had like 60 rifles. So this is once again a very fresh army, and it'll be a lot of fun to go up against them. And one final thing is I have finally tried to address my oil issue. So I'm sending some engineers back to the oil, just because if you noticed in the previous save game, you probably didn't, but it was around 56,000 oil. And although we haven't been moving our armor at all, it's been basically stationary over here, we're barely gaining any oil, which means that once we start attacking and moving out with the armor, we're going to lose a lot of oil per turn. So just to kind of, until we can gain this oil field, which I think, yeah, is a level 3, and although that's going to be helpful, that's only 1 oil field. So just in the meantime, to offset that, I'm sending one of my engineers back to get this oil, and the other engineer back to get this oil. So if I get 3 oils up from level 2 to level 3, that's 1,000 each, because it goes from 1,000 to 2,000 from level 2 to level 3. So that's an additional 3,000 oil, and I think that'll stop the bleeding. So, alright, well that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.